How identity gets assigned. There is a moment no one remembers, and yet everything depends on it. Not a moment of action, but a moment of naming. Before anything is proven, before anything is understood, something is said. And what is said becomes what is seen. Imagine a room that doesn't look like a room. No walls, no ceiling, no furniture. Just a system of quiet agreements already in place before anyone arrives. A child enters. No history, no story, no identity. And immediately, the assignment begins. Not through violence, not through force, but through something far more efficient. Recognition. That one is calm. That one is difficult. That one is bright. That one is behind. No one stops to ask, compared to what? Measured by whom? Defined against which standard? Because the system doesn't wait for answers. It moves forward on agreement. And here is where it becomes almost invisible. The label is never presented as a label. It is presented as a fact. Not, we are calling this child difficult, but this child is difficult. The difference is everything, because one can be questioned, the other cannot. Once the word is spoken as fact, the environment begins to reorganize itself around it. Teachers begin to anticipate disruption. Doctors begin to interpret symptoms through it. Peers begin to relate through it. Opportunities begin to filter through it. Nothing has been proven, and yet everything begins to align. This is the first layer of assignment. External, systemic, unquestioned. But the system is not complete yet, because an identity is not stable until it is accepted from the inside. So the second layer begins. Repetition. The same word in different voices, across different settings, over time. Not loudly, but consistently. And consistency feels like truth. At some point, the question stops being asked, "Is this true?" and becomes something else entirely. What does this mean about me? That shift is the installation. Now the label is no longer outside. It has crossed the threshold. And once inside, it does something remarkable. It begins to select evidence. Every moment that matches is remembered. Every moment that contradicts is dismissed. Not consciously, automatically. Because the system does not seek truth. It seeks coherence. And coherence requires consistency, even if the consistency is built on something that was never verified. Now we reach the third layer, performance. The individual begins to act in ways that align with the assigned identity. Not deliberately, but predictably. Expectations shape behavior. Behavior reinforces expectations. And what started as a word becomes a pattern. This is the moment the system closes, because now the evidence exists. See? They've always been this way. The origin is forgotten, the reinforcement is remembered, and the identity appears self-generated. But trace it back, and you won't find a discovery. You'll find a decision. A word, spoken early, accepted quickly, repeated often, defended unconsciously. This is how identity gets assigned. Not through truth, but through agreement. Not through investigation, but through repetition. Not through essence, but through language, stabilized by behavior. And the most subtle part of all, the system protects itself. Because once an identity is established, anything that challenges it feels like a threat. To others, because it disrupts their expectations. And to the individual, because it destabilizes the internal narrative that now feels like self. So contradiction is resisted, nuance is ignored, complexity is flattened, all in service of preserving something that was never examined at the beginning. And yet, There is always a quiet inconsistency, a moment that doesn't fit, a reaction that surprises, a version of self that doesn't align with the assigned role. These moments are usually dismissed, explained away, minimized. But they point to something the system cannot fully contain. Because if identity were truly fixed, there would be no deviation. And if deviation exists, then what has been assigned may not be what is. Which brings us back to the beginning. Before the word, before the agreement, before the repetition, before the performance. What was there? No label, no role, no assigned meaning. Just something present, unspecified, uncategorized, unclaimed by language. And if that was never defined, then everything that came after was built on top of it. Not discovered, constructed. So the question is no longer, who am I? But something far more precise. What was said before I ever had the chance to say anything at all? And what has been repeating ever since?